presented by Exquisite Timepieces. More information about them in the description down below and at the end of this video. The Rolex Submariner is one of my favorite watches, but I bought my Submariner a little over 4 years ago, and the truth is, if I was looking to buy one today, the odds are pretty good that I wouldn't wind up getting it. I know a lot of you guys are looking to buy this watch right here. It's the latest iteration of the Submariner, the 41mm version with its slimmer, reprofiled lug design, and you're trying to figure out how to get your hands on one. And for most of us, the options are pay an exorbitant price on the pre-owned or gray market, or get on a waiting list at an authorized dealer and hope that you'll get the call sometime this decade. But the truth is, there's a lot of watches to consider that are either available for purchase right now, or in some cases, a whole lot less expensive, and even watches that are better overall quality. And that's what I want to do today, is take a look at 5 watches that I think are great diver alternatives to the Submariner that you should probably consider if you find yourself in the position of not being able to get your hands on a Rolex today. First up, we're going to start with an obvious choice, and that's the Omega Seamaster. And yeah, I have reviewed the black dial version of this watch in the past, but this is my first time that I've really gotten an extended up-close look at the white dial, and I gotta say, wow, it is pretty stunning. I grabbed the white dial version from Exquisite Timepieces for this review because there's a lot of reasons why someone might be looking for alternatives to the Submariner, and one of them might be that they want to try something a little bit different. And look, you most certainly can't get a white-faced dive watch like this with the word Rolex on the dial. Like I said in the prelude of this video, some of the watches on this list are technically superior to the Submariner, and I could argue that the Seamaster is one of them. From the Master Chronometer 8800 movement to the white ceramic dial with laser engraved wave pattern to the overall fit and finish, this watch most definitely gives the Sub a run for its money. And speaking of money, did I mention that this costs $5,200? Yeah, that's like $4,000 less than the Submariner. On the wrist, I'd say that this watch does wear a hair bigger than the Submariner, even my older super cased version, but on my 6 3/4 inch wrist, it's not too large. And part of that sense of wrist presence might just be that it's the white dial. I always feel like white dials stand out more. This watch has all of the features you want, and even some you don't need. It punches way above its weight class in terms of value for money compared to the Submariner, and it's one that, like I said, was an obvious choice. But for you guys out there who have your heart set on a Rolex, give this watch a closer look because you might just wind up preferring it. This video is presented in partnership with Exquisite Timepieces, my local brick-and-mortar watch dealer located here in Naples, Florida. Exquisite is an authorized dealer of dozens of watch brands, including Omega, Seiko and Grand Seiko, Blancpain, Breguet, and many, many more. Exquisite also has a fantastic selection of pre-owned watches with new inventory coming in daily. So if you're looking for your next watch, I highly recommend checking out their website, exquisitetimepieces.com, or calling their store at 239-227-2932. And if you do happen to talk to them, let them know that you heard about them from Guy and the Just Bluefish channel. I can't recommend them enough. Second on the list of Submariner alternatives is something a whole lot more affordable, and it's a watch that I'm absolutely in love with. It's the Seiko SPB143. And look, I just bought this watch a little bit over a month ago, and I have to say I love it. I have been wearing it constantly. So if you want a diver that gives you legendary dive watch vibes at a price of around $1,000, I really can't recommend this one enough. I did do a full-length review of this watch a week or two ago, so if you want to take a deep dive into all the features and the specs, as well as my pros and cons on the SPB143, I'd highly recommend checking out that video. But suffice to say that while this is an awesome watch, obviously you aren't getting luxury watch level features or fit and finishing for the price. Despite some of the shortcomings, for me, this is a Hall of Fame dive watch. I just love the styling and the aesthetic on this piece, and I enjoy wearing it so much. It's based on the 1965 classic 62 Moss Seiko diver, and it gives you all of those vintage Seiko diver vibes in a much more modern build. On my 6 3/4 inch wrist, it wears perfectly. The overall size and scale hits the mark as being a watch that I think would wear really well on a wide range of wrist sizes. And considering the price, it won't break the bank if you want something that you can both be proud to wear but not worry about it like you might one of your more expensive timepieces. Like I said, it's not without a few shortcomings, and I've covered all of those in my full-length review, but I have absolutely no regrets about having purchased this watch for my collection, and I highly recommend that you guys give it a closer look if you haven't already. So my third watch on the list is a Grand Seiko diver. I figured we took a look at a more affordable Seiko, so why not see what Grand Seiko has to offer? And this is the SPGA 231. It's a titanium watch running the Grand Seiko spring drive caliber 9R65, and it comes in at a price of $7,100. So I don't think that Grand Seiko divers get enough love, and that might be in part because of the success of the non-sports watches that Grand Seiko is currently producing. Things like the Snowflake, they're great, fantastic watches, and perhaps they do overshadow what the brand is doing in its dive watch range. But this watch here is one that I really wanted to share with you guys. When I was over at the store picking out watches for this video, I asked one of the guys at Exquisite Timepieces to pull that SPGA out of the case, and I just gave the bezel a quick spin, and I was like, yep, this is the one. The quality of Grand Seiko's watches in general, from the solid build and the innovative technology, really it is second to none, and that doesn't even take into account the immaculate finishing that their watches have. The brushed and polished surfaces on this watch are so much better than the majority of what you're seeing from other brands that I had to include this on a list of Submariner alternatives. And like I said, this does come with a spring drive movement. And look, I'm not going to get into all the details about the movement here, but suffice to say, it is really outstanding. It gives you both superb timekeeping accuracy to the tune of minus to plus 15 seconds per month. It also has a 72-hour power reserve and the smoothest sweeping seconds hand in the industry. I absolutely love the spring drive movement, and at some point, I really want to get a watch with this movement in my personal collection. Now, this watch does come in at 44 millimeters in diameter, so it does wear a bit larger than the Submariner, or any of the other options on this list for that matter, and I'd say that it's a bit too big for my liking. But if you have a wrist at or above 7 inches, or if you just prefer a watch with a larger wrist presence in general, you're probably really going to like this one. And since it's made from high-intensity titanium, while it might look a bit larger on the wrist, it wears like a feather, and I can imagine it would be great for all-day comfort. Number 4 on the Rolex Submariner alternatives list is another fairly obvious choice, but just because it's obvious doesn't mean that it's not a great choice, and that's the Tudor Black Bay 58. And I've only recently been dialed into the awesomeness of the Tudor Black Bay 58, having done a full review of this watch just a couple of months back, and I have to say, I'm super impressed with it. Unfortunately, it took me way too long to join the party of Black Bay 58 fans. So here was my problem. I borrowed and I did a review on the original full-size Black Bay several years ago, and while I can most certainly say that that's a really nice, really high-quality, high-value watch, I just didn't like it. It was a bit too big, and on the wrist, it was quite thick and what I would call slab-sided. And while, yeah, it was superb quality and great value, it just wasn't for me. So, since I wasn't too into that watch, I never put much of a priority on taking a closer look at the Black Bay 58, and in retrospect, I can say that that was a huge mistake. This watch is outstanding. It fixed nearly all of the complaints that I had with the original, larger version, and it's nearly perfected the watch. Wearing the 58 feels like they designed the watch just for me. And at $3,700, this might be the biggest value proposition on the list. It's super high quality. It has a great in-house COSC movement, and on my 6 3/4-inch wrist, it fits like a glove. I even love the golden accents and the gilt dial and the bezel insert, and that's something that I didn't expect to be so into. But yeah, I think the styling is fantastic as well. Well, except for the snowflake hands. I'm just not a huge fan of those. But if you want to save a bundle of cash and you want a watch that has a little bit of the Rolex heritage, but still comes off distinctly different than the Submariner, I'd say give the Black Bay 58 a really close look. This is the watch that I might buy today if I didn't already own a Submariner, and I did want to add a luxury diver to my collection. And that brings us to the last watch in my list of 5 Rolex Submariner alternatives, and it's a bit of a dark horse, and it's one that I think has been overlooked by far too many people because it's seriously a nice watch, and that's the Glashutte Original SeaQ. The SeaQ is actually the only watch on our list that comes in at a price above the Submariner's suggested retail price. Brand new, this green dial, green bezel model has a retail price of $10,200. Now, of course, you probably can't find a Submariner at retail, and if you were going to buy one in the aftermarket, it's going to cost more than that, but I digress. There's also the black dial, black bezel variant, which I actually did a full review on in the past, and that comes in at a slightly more affordable price of $9,900, but I doubt anyone's going to go ahead and split hairs over $300, so they're effectively the same price. That said, like I mentioned in my original review of this watch, it is extremely nice. At 39.5 millimeters with a thickness right around 12 millimeters, it wears on the wrist perfectly as well. It's not too big, it's not too small, it should be a real crowd pleaser for just about everyone. And to help get that perfect fit, it has a really clever hidden micro adjustment system where you push down on the logo on the clasp and you can let the bracelet in or out by a few millimeters in either direction without any tools at all. It runs the exquisitely finished in-house Glashutte caliber 39-11 movement, which sadly is hidden behind a covered case back. It is a dive watch after all, but if you ever get a chance to go by an authorized dealer, check out some of the brand's watches and see if you can find one with a display case back. They are really nicely finished movements, and it's something that, if you enjoy that kind of thing, you'd really got to see in person. This watch, and most of the timepieces in the Glashutte original product line, have a bit more of a luxury feel to their fit and finish than the other watches on this list. It is still a rugged tool watch, without a doubt, but things like the polished center links of the bracelet and the mix of brushed surfaces with polished chamfered edges on the watch case, they do give it a feeling of opulence, but it would be a great watch, and it would be right at home on the wrist of somebody in the boardroom or out on the water. So there you have it, 5 watches I'd suggest having a closer look at if you're looking for alternatives to the Rolex Submariner. There's a wide range of prices here and a lot of different styles, but they're all awesome dive watches, and they are all watches that I've personally experienced and watches that I would highly recommend checking out.